on this edition of the Self-Publishing Show.
Mutual colleague of ours, who I'll name check, Jim Cliff, said to you, God, you uploaded a book to Kindle. I'm actually selling it and making money. And a little thing went ting in your head at that point. That was the beginning of this phase of your life, wasn't it?
My little thing went ting. That's interesting.
Your ting-a-ling.
Publishing is changing. No more gatekeepers. No more barriers. No one standing between you and your readers. Do you want to make a living from your writing? Join indie bestseller Mark Dawson and first-time author James Blatch as they shine a light on the secrets of self-publishing success. This is the Self-Publishing Show. There's never been a better time to be a writer.
Hello and welcome to our Christmas edition of the Self-Publishing Show. I'm James Blatch.
And I'm Mark Dawson. We should say Self-Publishing Show ho-ho, couldn't we?
Could have said that. I thought you were going to say you're Father Christmas. Look at you. I mean, if you're watching on YouTube, we are wearing our Christmas jumpers, and you look a little bit like Santa.
Yeah, you're saying I need to go to the barber's, which is true. I do.
Your white flowing locks, my white flowing beard. Yes, I'm wearing my Star Wars Christmas jumper. Can't really tell. It's Empire Strikes Back, frozen Hoth.
Yeah, it looks like Hoth. Yes, absolutely. Very nice.
And so you may be listening to this in June, of course. Lots of people listen to the podcast throughout the rest of the year, but we're recording it, and it is snowy and frozen where I am in the UK, so it's looking nice, although I think it's probably going to warm up a bit before Christmas. We won't get that white Christmas. My daughter will get a white Christmas in the mountains of Canada.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so it's a kind of a special edition of this. Not only is it the holidays, as they say in America, not sure why they say that, it's the holidays. We're also going to talk to Mark about him because it's an anniversary for you, Mark, is it not? In fact, I don't think you even knew this was your anniversary until Amazon told you.
I thought it was next year. I was wrong. So yeah, I got an email from Darren at Amazon a couple of months ago, I suppose, or no, early in November, and said that my 10-year anniversary, when I first pressed publish, was the 24th of November, 2012.
Wow.
I thought it was next year, but what I'd forgotten was I actually uploaded a version of my first book, my first trad book in 2012, and then I think I did my first, The Black Mile was 2013, I think. So I was kind of experimenting a year before I thought I was. So actually, yes, I think it was, as I said, the 24th of November, I think was my 10-year anniversary as an indie author, which was turned out to be quite a good decision. Yes,
did turn out to be a good decision. So we're going to go through that a little bit, dissect it a bit, so what you've done, where you are, a bit about your writing process. You're going to be the interviewee for this episode. A couple of things to talk about first. Before then, we do have a Facebook ads challenge, going to be really good. If Facebook ads are something you are yet to master, this is the challenge for you to go on. We're going to do it in January. We're going to do it in a Facebook group, which we've set up a link to, which is selfpublishingformula.com/Facebook challenge, all one word. So selfpublishingformula.com/Facebook challenge. That will take you to a Facebook group, which is called Facebook for Authors. Join that group, and that will be a place where you'll get your challenge 7 days in January, and you'll get supported by us and by each other to take you through that. And by the end of that process, you'll have your foot in the door of still to this day, very important platform for authors, Facebook ads. So number one for me. I do always play about with Amazon ads. I have got one Amazon ads campaign looking all right for me at the moment, but Facebook ads are for me personally, are the driver. I know other authors, it is Amazon ads, but and TikTok. And there you go. Talking of TikTok, we should mention that Caroline Peckham and Suzanne Valenti, two sisters who we've had on the podcast before, spoke at our live conference based in Kent here in the UK, launched their 8th book in the Zodiac Academy yesterday. And of course, by lunchtime, it was number 1 in the entire .com store. Congratulations to them. I didn't see it get to number 1 in the UK, but it was on its way. And I think it was number 1 in Australia. And it's so many pages long. If you order the paperback, you can start to hear the lorry reversing towards your house. That Caroline was on TikTok last night saying they're having problems getting the paperback to go live. That's probably because it's 916 pages or something. But it's a very, very big book. But fans adore it, and they do so well. There is a couple of writers in the indie space killing it, Mark.
Yes, they're number 10 at the moment in the UK. But that's at £8.99, so it's not a cheap ebook. But good for them. It's people pricing books at a level which is still obviously good value for such a big book. It's not hard to work out. That's doing quite well financially for them. So it's lovely to see. Good for them. Just because I zoned out a moment ago, we did give the URL for the challenge, didn't we?
We did, yes.
Good. Okay,
I gave it twice. Yeah.
Good. Well done. Excellent.
We'll
give it a third time just because so I can make sure you got it right.
A third time is selfpublishingformula.com/Facebook challenge.
Yeah,
all
correct.
one word.
Very good.
So I'm just having a look to see, whilst we're on the subject of this, how they're doing in the .com store. Have you seen that? They're still there. Top 100, they're number one in the .com store today.
Very good.
One place ahead of Morgan Elizabeth. Megan Quinn, who's been on the show, friend of the show, is number 3.
Yeah.
Contemporary romance, killing it.
Claire
Kingsley. That's fantastic to see Claire. The How the Grump Solved Christmas. That's a brilliant addition from Claire. Yeah, we were with Claire in Florida, and she works closely with Lucy Score, a good friend of hers, and she's such a lovely person. So that's really good. Yeah, isn't it lovely to look at the top 100 and see people who killing it in that chart? It's really good. Colleen Hoover's there as well, of course. Colleen, if you're listening, we would love to have you on the show. I have emailed you a couple of times, but to no avail so far. Maybe you don't see the emails because you're so incredibly popular. You probably have a very big inbox. Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about selling books and doing well. I just mentioned I've got 2 events publishing-wise. I finished my 3rd book, which is a novella. Have a call with the copy editor after this meeting, actually, after this recording, and that goes to him. So that's going to be out probably in January, end of January, beginning of Feb. And I got my audio files for book 2 yesterday. So I've uploaded those to ACX, to Audible, and they are currently in review. Don't know how long that's good.
Have you proofed them?
No.
You haven't proofed them?
I haven't.
Why haven't you proofed them?
Because there's 9.5 hours of listening. I haven't got time.
Oh, maybe we should probably get someone to do that, because there might be mistakes. It's not unusual.
Do you proof all your audiobooks?
Yeah, well, I don't, because I have mine produced by other people, but you absolutely should.
Mine's been proofed by the production company, but they've delivered them to me. But you're saying that I should proof them as well? I
think someone should, yes. Yeah, I do. So, I mean, for the German ones,
I don't have 10 hours in my life to sit and listen to that book.
No, you don't. But you don't have time, but you do have money. So you can sometimes, pay someone. This is going to be too late now, but what I would do is post that in the Facebook group, SPF, and see if anyone wants to earn a little bit of Christmas pocket money, and have a fun, enjoyable read at the same time, or your readers. But yeah, it's the same as anything else, really. I mean, it's probably okay if it's gone through a professional body, but you've only got their word for it. I would, and it's not their reputation on the line if they've made mistakes. So, yeah, I would always check.
I mean, I sampled it. Obviously, I listened to the whole of chapter 1.
Well, technical errors will be picked up when in the uploading process. Yeah. If there's anything even remotely off, if the bit rate is wrong, they'll pick it up and tell you. But they won't proof it for kind of content. No one listens to it. It's all automatic. So anyway, that's what I would do. It's up to you if you want to gamble.
Right. No, I'll do that. I mean, it takes a while for it to be turned around. So if we did come up with something, I'm sure I could email them and say I need to replace the files. But
you should basically get your son to do it. He must be looking for. He must be looking for a bit of Christmas pocket money.
I can't get him to shovel snow or cut the lawn or do anything. I mean, honestly, he's a generation that don't think they can actually do anything. He looked at the cooker and said, "Well, how am I supposed to operate that?" So, well, you teach yourself. Exactly. Yes, he's not going to do that. Emily would do it, but she's not here. But I will, yes, potentially. I mean, I do have a couple of people I know are waiting for the audiobook. So,
well, there you go. Give it to them for free.
I could send them the files and they could do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks for that bit of extra work. Thank you. But I am excited about having that. So I'm making profit now. Not huge profit, I think I've said before, and it's not as big as it was a month ago when I was projecting like $7,500 a year. It's not going to be that now. It just ebbs and flows a bit, but last month is less than that. But I think. Are you
saying you make more than the median author income on two books?
my income, I think, was about £13,000, but I spend a lot of money on advertising, so the profit was low. But I passed 10,000 books. Did I mention that last time?
You
I can't
did,
remember.
yeah. That's very good, yeah. You didn't mention. I saw your Facebook post.
Yeah, so I passed 10,000 book sales.
I was told off about that.
What?
My first response there was average, and then I put well done smiley face.
I didn't see that.
Lisa saw the first and said, "You're so mean." And I think James knows I'm only playing. But then she said, "Well, what about James's friends?" I'm like, well, I don't care about James's friends. Anyway, no, I deleted it, so you didn't see that one. No,
how Grinch of you!
It's very good. 10,000 is excellent.
Yeah, thank you very much. So and the way I've calculated that, because a couple of people asked who know how this works, is every copy of every book. So that's ebooks, print on demand. That's KENP divided by the normalized page numbers to give me a per book. But they're paid for pages and audiobooks as well. Although the vast majority, I think 5,500 of those were ebooks. So the rest big chunk was page reads.
Yeah.
And then audiobooks, I think I've done knocking on 600 audiobooks.
That's very good. Yeah, very good.
So the audiobooks has been surprising for me. It's been a little bit slower again the last few weeks, but up until recently, it was a book and a half a day. So I was getting 45 sales a month without really targeting that. So I think that is the sort of hot area at the moment, audiobooks. We've had this conversation before, but my next decision really is whether I stick with a Audible exclusive or I go wide onto Spotify with my audiobooks. Do you have a view on that, Master?
I would probably stay exclusive, probably just because you get slightly higher royalty. It's quite a lot less if you go wide. And I experimented with wide with a couple of the German books. I think it was the German books I didn't and couldn't sell any, and I just didn't have time to kind of. Obviously, there are things you can do to sell more, but I didn't. That was one of the things I just don't have time to do. So it's a little easier for me just to put them on Amazon, and you're still getting them into iTunes and Audible, places like that through that route. So I'm not, and Spotify is quite new to the game yet. So I think it potentially in a year's time, it might be a very viable platform, but I'm not convinced it's there yet. If you try and buy a book on Spotify, it's very painful.
Right.
So if you go to on your iPhone, for example, go to Audiobooks and then try to buy it, it will come out with a page saying, we know this is not optimal, or we know this is painful, but because Apple would take 30% of any sales through their platform, you have to go to a website, buy the book, and then it appears in your account on your phone. So it's really clunky.
Right. Yeah.
So, but they'll fix. I imagine they'll fix that eventually.
Yeah. Yeah, that is a bit of a bar to entry at the moment for a lot of readers. Okay, well that's my piddly little news, my average news. Your more exciting and illustrious career. Let me start at the end. How many Milton books do you have now?
21, with 22 out next year.
How do you
plus there's novellas, probably with everything, it's probably nearer 30 now.
What, just Milton?
Yeah. Or kind of very connected very closely to him, but yeah, something along those lines.
Yeah. So you have Milton, you had Beatrix Rose, and her daughter. Was that a separate series, or was that? That's
a separate series. Isabella, yeah, 5 books in that series. 5 or 6 books for Beatrix, 5 or 6 for Isabella, 2 for Atticus, so kind of Atticus a detective series.
Yeah.
And 3 or 4 kids' books.
Oh yeah. Which you co-write.
A couple of standalones. So yeah, all in all, it must be nearly between 50 and 60 now.
Milton is your bread and butter financially.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. He's certainly. Whenever I release a Milton book, that's the one that you can see. My accountant said to me the other day, "What happened in September?" And I was like, "Oh yeah, that was a Milton release." So you can definitely notice.
Yeah. And are you going to go back to the Rose girls, women?
Yes. Actually, Beatrix, I've got to, because spoiler alert, Beatrix doesn't make it out of her trilogy. I've gone back and done some prequels with her, so that I have an Audible exclusive out So just audio first. They get a year where it's not available anywhere else. That's going to be out. It must be early next year, and that's Gemma Whelan narrating that from Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
Again, so that'll be fun. And for Isabella, her story continues. I'm contracted with the audiobook people I use, Howes and Tantor, that there's a fifth book, I can't remember, sixth, I think, contracted with them. So I'll write that in the next 18 months or so. And then we'll see. I mean, they're fun as a kind of a palate cleanser. They're much more kind of fast-paced, action-based. Whereas Milton tends to be a little bit slower, a bit more realistic. Takes me a little bit longer to write. But on the other hand, probably sells 3 times as many. So, it's financially, if I was just doing this financially, I'd probably be writing Milton's all the time and nothing else.
Yeah.
But that might get boring.
And when you're this deep into a series, I'm starting to think about book 4. I don't really have the story yet. I think I've got an opening scene and a vague idea, but how quickly do stories come to you? By the time you've finished a previous book, are you ready to go on the next one?
Yeah, definitely. Probably ready for the next 2. So there's loads of ideas. I mean, for example, I'm probably, as the time we're recording this, the cryptocurrency exchange scam, well, not scam, but there was an exchange that went down,
FTX,
FTX, and the guys in the Bahamas, he's been arrested, he's going to get extradited back to the States, I suspect, and that's interesting to me. I think that could be something that Milton could get involved with. There's a cryptocurrency scam from about 5 years ago called OneCoin that
one coin to rule them all. Was that their tagline?
It kind of was, actually. Yeah, right. It was. That was very close to what the tag was, and it was. There's a very good BBC podcast called "The Search for the Missing Crypto Queen," that was really good. I mean, and they're talking that 6 or 7 billion euros, in terms of the scam, which was like, you think about, that's robbing that much money from people who couldn't afford it. You've got Kenyan farmers who sold the goats that their family depended on, because they were sold on this as they didn't want to miss out on what they were promised was unlimited wealth. That's prime Milton. So I'll probably do something along those lines next year. But yeah, just kind of keep your eyes open on the news. I'm quite heavily invested in Ukraine at the moment with what we've done this year with the family that live with us, and so I'd quite like to write about that in some capacity. Milton could be involved, could go and find someone in Ukraine, would be interesting to write about. So yeah, it's easy. I don't have a problem with finding ideas. Just basically read the newspapers, and there'll always be something.
Do you have a notepad by your bedside table on your bedside?
No, I don't. But I've obviously got my phone, so I have a little note where I'll.
Shouldn't go to bed with your phone.
So I'm told, but it's never bothered me particularly. But I'll just open a notepad and scribble something down if anything comes to mind. So I've got maybe 6 ideas I could pick from at any one time and start writing.
I'm a bad one for not getting off my phone, so I'll go to bed. Jill's normally asleep. It's all dark, and you just start scrolling, and that's the worst thing to do because it keeps you awake. So now, for some time now, I've kept the phone downstairs. But the only thing I regret is occasionally I hear like an old aircraft going overhead, and I know there's an old Antonov, an AN-24 that schleps around Europe hauling cargo. I mean, it is a 1951 aircraft, and it's very distinctively noisy. It's old Russian-built Antonov, and I hear it droning overhead, and I think that must be it, and I want to look it up. But that's my life, Mark. That's what I miss.
God, you're boring.
Jill, I'll wake her up. Jill, the Antonov's overhead again. Yeah. Anyway, okay. So let's go back a bit to the beginning then. So that's your life now. Lots of books, lots of writing. I mean, actually, one more question before we go back is how much planning do you do? So 2023, do you know exactly what you're going to write and publish?
No, not really. I know the book I'm finishing next. I'm about 85,000 words through the third Atticus book, and I've taken a break because I've written a novella this month that I'm rushing to get out for Christmas, which I thought 30,000 words this month. I thought it might not be possible, but actually I think it might. So depending on how things go. So that one is called Sandstorm, and that will be out probably by Christmas. The next Atticus one is, it's coming in the last. I'm on the home straight now, but it's kind of getting to the denouement, which is a little bit more tricky to write with lots of threads to tie up, twists to go back and elaborate on, which will probably take me another month or two, I suspect, to get that finished. Then it's going to be Uppercut, which is the next Milton book. And then we'll see, probably another Milton. I mean, I wouldn't mind writing 3 Miltons next year, and maybe an Atticus. So
your accountant would like to write 3 Miltons next year.
I'm sure he would. Yeah. So yeah, we'll see. I mean, I've kind of got the last Milton book ends on what I call an open loop. So it's not really a cliffhanger, although some readers might disagree with me about that. But it kind of has disposed of the threads in that book, but it's left an arc, that, kind of a traditional TV arc that will continue through the next 3 or 4 books. And the next one, Uppercut, won't touch on that directly, although I'll hint at it. And then the next one, which might be called The Dead Road, I think, then might address that in a bit more head on. But we'll see. I kind of reboot, kind of a soft reboot, I suppose, in the 21st book, because I wanted Milton to have a bit more jeopardy in his story, so he kind of goes back on the run again. That whole kind of A-team, pursued by Colonel Decker.
Yeah. If you can find him.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, jailed for a crime he didn't commit.
Yeah. It's interesting how TV do that all the time with series. They'll end a series on a cliffhanger, and so you can't wait for the next series, and no one complains about it. But
they do.
Do they?
They do complain about it. But,
I think it's standard on a TV series.
I think it is standard. I think there's a little different reaction you get from readers and viewers. Just thinking of House of the Dragon, the HBO series Game of Thrones prequel. That kind of, again, it's not a cliffhanger because they've disposed of all the kind of the plot lines that they developed in that first series, but it does end on, without spoiling it, a fairly shocking moment, right, that you want to get back into. I mean, that, it is kind of a cliffhanger, but it's addictive, and that's, there is a reason why TV shows individually will end on open loops, and then end of series will usually do the same thing to get you into the next series. But yeah, you try and do it. We mentioned Caroline and Suzanne Peckham and Valenti about, they are fairly brutal with their cliffhangers, and they do get a lot of heat from their readers, and they basically take the mickey out of their readers, saying that you're going to hate us. There's a massive cliffhanger, and it doesn't, is provided you're going to get pushback from readers, at least kind of on the surface. If you can get over that, they are incredibly effective to get people to buy the next book. And they're at number 1 with the 8th book in a series right now. Yeah. So they haven't lost that many readers along the way by teasing them with cliffhangers. So they do work, but they've got to be, as long as you could be in for a bumpy ride with Facebook comments and emails, that they're effective.
Do you think it's so the route I've gone down so far is to write these standalone stories with a bit of overlapping characters, but there's no sequence to them really. Do you think it's better, more commercially sound, to have a central character and a rolling series that really you do want to go from the next book to the next book? Absolutely.
Yeah. I mean, your kind of thread. So you will get some read through quite a lot, because you're provided that your readers are enjoying your books, and there's no reason why we would think that they're not. They'll be interested in the next one because they like aviation, they like military history, they like the way you tell the story. They'll go from book to book. But if you had a character that they were invested in, rather than the idea of a setting they might enjoy reading about, that will be much more effective, because you get both that way. You could set a series in the 80s and kind of really work on the atmosphere and the aircraft that were flying at the time, all the things that you get excited about. But then if you have a character with a backstory and personal relationships and development and threat and jeopardy and all of that kind of stuff, it becomes you're just kind of really winding up the tension, and it's much more likely that someone will want to stay in that world if they're also invested in the character who's involved with the story.
Interesting.
I mean, there's a reason. You just need to look at the charts, and which books are doing very well. Usually series books with continuing characters. It's fairly easy to see that. Well,
I'm at that brilliant point. This is not about me; it's about you. But I'm going to talk about me. I love this bit where you're just got a blank page in front of you. It's where the magic comes, right? You're thinking about a story, and these people, these characters, this situation will do anything you want because you're the author, and you can make that happen, which is it feels my God complex. But from book one, a common comment I got from a few people was that there was this MI5 agent in it called Susie Attenborough, a very early female MI5 agent in the 60s, and most people said to me they thought she would be the character I'd go on with, and it had never occurred to me. But now I've got a blank page in front of me. My fourth book could be effectively book one in that series of her from 1970 onwards, keeping the military aviation theme. But that would be a really fun thing to do, and she'll get herself into some scrapes, I expect.
What do our brothers think of her career choice?
Well, she had three brothers, so
David, Richard, and
it's not those ones. Yeah, she had three brothers. Interesting you asked that backstory, because of course she was a bit of what you would have described as the tomboy in the 60s, which we now know is probably just a woman with a bit of ambition who had to be a tomboy because that's how that manifested itself. But without getting into all that, we're in the 70s, so I'd have to get into any of that.
Yes, exactly.
Anyway, looking forward to that. Okay, right, back to you. So let's go back to the beginning. I knew you at the BBFC. I knew you had a couple of books published by Picador or someone, I don't know who it was, in the dim distant past. I read one of them, which I quite enjoyed, and The Art of Falling Apart, I think, was one I read. And not much had happened after that with your writing until a mutual colleague of ours, who I'll name check, say Jim Cliff, said to you, God, you uploaded a book to Kindle. I'm actually selling it and making money. And a little thing went ding in your head at that point. And that was the beginning of this phase of your life, wasn't it?
My little thing went ting. That's interesting.
You were tingling.
Was Jim, and also actually weirdly at the same time, another friend of mine who you don't know had also said the same thing. And so I had the two of them saying that how easy it was and how they were, selling some books. I don't think either of them sold many books, but they were selling enough to make me think this could be something that I might want to look into. And I in chronology what I was doing. So I think I had a book that I'd been writing, the Black Mile, and was kind of ready to start shipping that with my agent around London. We did that anyway, and because I still thought that was the best way to do it. Stupidly, and luckily didn't get any. I got a few kind of nibbles, but nothing concrete. So I decided, I might as well put it up there myself and see how things went. And this was 2013, I think, late 2012, 2013, and it was easy. Started to get readers, not many, but enough for me to think that there was enough potential for me to spend the time and a bit of money working out how to kind of get things going more effectively. And then I kind of got started with the Milton books, and that was, I think those were 2013, 2014. They were out, and that was the start of it, really. Never really looked back.
And so John Milton was the first. Was that the first indie book you wrote and published after Black Mile?
No. Yes, after, possibly, I think I wrote The Imposter after that. So The Black Mile and The Imposter are the two books in the kind of Soho Noir series, which they're not available now. So I kind of took them down I'm not that happy with them. And I don't really feel that I've got the time or that I could justify spending the time I'd need to do to kind of lick those into shape. So they're kind of, I get emails quite a lot. Actually, people say, can I get them? And I'm like, no, you can't.
I'll tell you what you should do. You should do a Kickstarter with a bound edition of them for the hardcore.
I know, but it's like you could do, but I don't think it's what would make me. What I have most fun doing, and what would make me the most money is definitely writing another Milton book. So, they probably will never be re-released, but they were good kind of experiences and a good learning process for me to kind of see what I needed to do, both in terms of formatting, getting covers and learning and making mistakes on both of those fronts. Covers that I liked that were just not commercial. Formatting in those days, I used a third party in Australia to do my formatting, and whilst it was effective, it wasn't efficient, because if I had changes, I had to basically negotiate with the formatter to make those changes, send the files back, re-upload the files. It just took ages. But then, Vellum wasn't around then. There were other ways to do it. You could use Calibra and places, things like that, but it wasn't as easy as it is today. And then the things that you needed to do in order to send readers to the book. So the advertising options were very different. The kind of the list services, a big one in those days was Pixel of Ink, and Kindle News and Tips, and there were BookSense, I think, was around back in those days. BookBub wouldn't have been. FreeBooksy would have been just around about then. So that, there were options that were available that I tested. Some worked, some didn't. And trying to work out what I needed to do to generate interest was the thing that probably was the most important thing, and also the thing that was hardest to figure out.
So what's interesting is, when you started Milton, was that after a period of research, market research?
No, not really. I wasn't writing to market. It was just I thought, what would I like writing, and what would be commercial? And I'd had an idea for a while. I think it's probably when Casino Royale came out, the first Daniel Craig Bond film, which was kind of a more grounded, less Bond saves the world type story. And unfortunately, they kind of went away from that and he started saving the world again. But it was much more kind of small scale and realistic, which I liked. And I've been thinking, I used to love The Equalizer from the 80s with Edward Woodward.
Iwa-Wuwa.
Iwa-Wuwa, exactly, in a world with no consonants. And I wanted to kind of mash those two up and give it a kind of a fresh contemporary take on that kind of genre character. And the other thing that was in its favor was that I knew when I did the Black Mile, it took me, the research was loads of fun. I loved doing the research, much like you did, going to the National Archives and digging out, real documents from the 40s and 50s is great fun, but it's really slow. And that's fine. If you want to really dig into a book and take a year to write a book, knock yourself out. I heartily recommend going down and doing that. But I wanted to write more quickly, get books out there that I could sell. And it was a lot easier for me to do the research for something like Milton, because it is contemporary. It can all be done online. And also it's not based on fact. It's all kind of things I'm making up. So although the world is very complicated now and I need a Bible to help me navigate it and make sure I don't get things wrong, in those early days when I was just kind of writing, I could just write and fill out details as I went along, from Google, things like that, or from people that I know. And so I was able to write the first Milton book probably 4 months. And then in that year, 2014, I got faster. So I think 4 or maybe 5 books published that year. And that was whilst working full time at the BBFC and just writing on the train. And when I got home, and maybe at work, don't tell the boss, but I may have done a little bit at work. I
wrote my first novel at the BBFC.
Exactly.
And on the train.
Yeah. So that's that was the kind of the, and of course, as I was publishing more frequently, I noticed that sales went up. And at the same time, I was working out more effective ways to get people to read the first book. And then if they liked that, then there was another 2 or 3 that they could enjoy. And so started to see the kind of income matching what I was making in London and then accelerating past it. And then towards the end of that year, going past it by quite a lot. And that was, November 2014 was when I was able to go, I don't need to do this anymore. I can write full time. So nearly 8 years ago, which is been a full-time writer for 8 years, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. And when did you first start dabbling in paid ads as part of the marketing?
Yeah, probably 2014, I think, would have been Facebook to start with. I messed around with Amazon a bit after that because that Facebook came first, and I didn't have any success with either of them. So I think for Facebook, I was trying to drive traffic to the book and then make money through Kindle Unlimited, and it just didn't work. I couldn't figure it out. So I then kind of stepped back and looked at using Facebook ads to build my list. So giving away a novella, which worked really well, still works today. I still do it today. it is really effective. And then I kind of, with a bit of experience, I went back and looked at, okay, how can I think the reason I couldn't get the KU stuff to work is because I didn't have any way to track the effectiveness of the ads. And I had the kind of I don't know, I may not have been the first person to figure this out, but I would have been very nearly the first to figure out using tracking data that Amazon supply to complete the equation. So you can see both how much you spend and how much you make. And with that information, to complete the equation, you can work out whether you're making money or losing money. And when I saw I was making money, and in those days, 400-500% returns were not unusual. It was kind of like, okay, as much as I could afford, which wasn't that much then, buy ads and build your readership, make money, build your readership, and that was kind of the start of the. I'm not going to use the J word once on this podcast, but that was the start of
the
my
revolution
career. Really, that was the start of the career, and building a list of readers who I can rely on to buy almost everything that I put out. That's still that's the foundation of everything that I do, and was able to really start pushing on. And I think I'm not entirely sure how many I've sold now. It's around about 6 million now. Which is just ludicrous. But I can still remember back in the early days getting an email.
Sorry, I've sold 10,000, just so you know.
Your response there should have been average, Mark. Well, that's
yes.
You missed the trick there. But no, I still remember getting an email from the first reader who emailed me about my books, which was always one of the things I'd always wanted, never had as a traditionally published author. And I think it was a guy called Tam. He was in Wales, and he's died now. So I mean, obviously, I've had enough readers now. Some of whom will be, kind of towards the older end of the spectrum, and who aren't with us anymore. So I remember emailing Tam one time, and his wife emailed back and said, "I'm sorry, Tam has died," which was really kind of sad. But no, I remember I was at some kind of BBFC event, and it was.
Did you reply with FFS? Where am I going to find another reader now? Do you know anyone?
Yeah.
Or were you more gentle?
I think I was probably reasonably polite and kind. As I tried to be. But no, I remember getting an email from him at a BBFC event, like a black tie event. And I remember having a glass of champagne and just checking my phone. And I had an email from a reader. And I was like, holy shit, that's a first. And it was that was a real important step along the way to have that kind of contact with readers. And, I still love getting, emails from readers and obviously do now and more than a few, but usually, double figures a day usually in terms of readers' email. And I try to respond to as many of them as I can.
And you have a bit of a team now. Is it Mads? Does she work for your book service as well?
Just looking at her, she's not here though. No, she does. She looks after my store. So if you can buy signed copies of my books on my website, and Mads is in charge of that. That works pretty well. But no, apart from that, there are no other full-time members of staff. It's not like SPF where there's lots of us. It's just me. I do the ads. I do everything. I mean, I don't do the covers because I can't, and I'd much rather Stuart Beisch, whose name will be familiar to those who from this parish. And so Stu's been doing the covers for years now. I have a copywriter who does my blurbs for me because I can do it, but I'm not as good as she is. So quite happy to give that to her. But and formatting, I do that. Use Vellum now. It really is just me. And there are days when I'd quite like to be able to hand off stuff to other people, but unfortunately, I've never found anyone who can do the ads better than me. And that's not because I'm a genius at it. It's just because they're my books and I know enough about the platforms to be able to make them work effectively. You give it to an agency, as I've tried a couple of times, and they're just lines on a spreadsheet, and not that as effective. So I'd rather do that myself. So yeah, it's a one-man band. But it's fine. You can do it that way. I've built a pretty successful business just with me. And I'm not that unusual. There's nothing particularly special about me. It's
where's the best
anyone
way?
can do. Yeah,
I think if you can.
If you can, yeah. I mean, yeah. I was going to say it's easy to scale with more, but I don't know that it is. I've scaled it quite well myself, and I don't really think having a full-time member of staff doing something, I don't know what they do, would scale it any faster than I could do it. So, I'm not planning on adding anyone to the team. I don't really know what that would be. So I'm quite happy to continue as I am.
And do you do stuff for your ads campaigns? How often do you look at them?
Not as often as I did. So I mean, actually, I've got I have a very big to-do list, as you do too. There's like 25 things on it, and I won't get through. Some of them, they just go from list to list. Yes. And I never ever get to. And one of them, which is really bad of me, is ads check. So my Amazon ads I've been running, and these are not cheap. So these are running quite a lot of money going, and I'm not checking them, which is stupid.
Yeah.
But so I did the UK one I hadn't checked for 6 weeks. And so I did check that the other day, and luckily it was fine. I've got to do Germany and the US at some point before Christmas, but then there's so much more to do. We'll see. But no, I certainly don't recommend that for most authors who are starting. But I don't recommend it for anybody. I suppose that's something I could hand off, is to get someone to just pull the data for me, and then plug it into my spreadsheet. Then I can check. But then, Amazon, if you're listening, and I know you are, and we have a lot of Amazonians listening to this podcast, please allow kind of access to accounts to kind of named people who can pull the data for us and pop it into spreadsheets without giving them full login.
I see. Yeah,
that would be nice.
You can do that, but they have to be users on your account. But yes, that is the thing. I have, for Fusebooks, Tina compiles the monthly figures for me, but I have what I call a scratchpad spreadsheet in there, and every 7 to 10 days I go in and I do the previous 7 days. And I personally find the process of pulling the data and putting it in there is the process of analyzing it. And this is going to sound stupid, it's the way I work, I think, but if someone presented me with that data...
No, I'm the same. I'm exactly the same. Yeah, it is actually is doing the work. You're more involved with it, and it sinks in a bit deeper than if you just look at something. No, I'm definitely the same, which is unfortunate, because that just means we can't effectively hand that off to anybody. C'est la vie. First world problem, but
I'm the same with you with I'm not going to turn this around because there's telephone numbers on there, but I'm at that point where you have your previous to-do list, you rip that over and you start a new one, and then you transfer over the stuff which you do. But this has now been, I think, a week, and I haven't transferred the old one, but the new one's full. There's stuff on there that I obviously need to look at. But it has been particularly, but it's always busy. I'm always busy, and I always find myself saying to friends, I'm busy, and I've stopped saying that now, because just how it is for us, and I quite enjoy it. I'd be lost without it. Although if a Euro Millions win came along, maybe I'd adjust.
Yes.
To a life of golf and private jets. And my last sort of area is about, for the rest of us, in terms of what's changed, what perhaps you would do differently today because of the way these ecosystems changed from how you would have done in 2014 when you got going.
Oh, it's just, a kind of standard response on that is when I started, advertising was not possible in the same way that it is today. There were ways you could leverage mailing lists to put the word out. The kind of the BookBub model was available, but different, with different players involved. But Facebook ads, cost per click ad models didn't really exist for us. Google was around, but it's never worked for books. So that wasn't possible. But you didn't need to advertise, and you could ride the organic momentum of an algorithm in a way that isn't really as easy these days. But the kind of the counter to that is that there are advertising options that are very powerful, from Facebook to Amazon to BookBub, PPC ads, and other options that are available that weren't available then. So the difference is advertising was unnecessary, a good thing, but not necessary when I started. These days, it's a good thing and it is necessary. It's not a luxury; it is now a necessity. I don't really think realistically it's possible to break out as an author in a way that would make a noticeable difference to your life financially without advertising. I just don't think that's possible now. So That's the main thing. So, if I was starting out again, one of the first things, and obviously people need to bear in mind that SPF has courses on advertising, so you need to take that with a pinch of salt. But the kind of the main thing I would say is you have to learn how to do it properly. There are other courses available, of course, but I think you can do it as I did by trial and error, which is fine. It can take a while and it might be expensive, or get someone to show you the shortcuts and the best strategies to learn. But I think it is actually, if you're approaching this as a business and potentially a replacement for your full-time job, that's no longer a luxury. It is something that you have to do.
Yeah. Which brings us neatly back to our Facebook ads challenge. So we are ever the evangelists about mastering these subjects. Very important, as you say, for exactly those reasons. So we're setting up this challenge, and the idea is it gets you your foot in the door of Facebook ads, that early competency, which is often the hurdle that people have to accessing it. And you can join the challenge. It's going to take place in January, something like January the 10th, I think, around the middle of the month. Yeah. And if you go to selfpublishingformula.com/Facebook challenge, that will send you to a Facebook group. Join that Facebook group. That's where we're going to be doing everything. Mark Dawson, my interviewee today. Thank you very much indeed for taking part. Where are you in the world? Are you in the East Coast, West Coast?
I'm southwest coast.
Southwest coast. You're not on the coast.
Well, not too well. Half an hour.
Well, not
an hour
yet.
Away from the coast.
Global warming.
Oh, well, no, it is. It's quite wet that direction, but I can see the kingfish is darting around this morning, so it's very pretty this morning.
Lovely, yeah. Well, hopefully you'll get some snow like we've had. No, it's been really great talking to you. Thank you very much. Indeed, it's a bit weird saying that. And that's congratulations, I guess, on 10 years of KDP publishing.
Yeah, and very nice at Amazon. Yeah, they posted a nice graphic on their social media, which was lovely to see. So, no, it's great. Amazon. I'm obviously a big fan. They've changed my life for the better in lots of ways. So, I'm unashamedly a fanboy for Amazon, and all the Amazons I've met, and I've met a few now over the years. They're all lovely people. So
yeah.
And as I say, I know some of them. I think, in fact, one of them who's very, very, very senior, not that senior, but not that far beneath being that senior, is a listener in Seattle. So, if he's listening, hello. But no, big fan,
they are a nice bunch, and actually some thoughts with them, because we do know that Amazon, which grew rapidly during the pandemic, is now going to shrink a bit as the recession hits.
10%, 10% of their jobs have been culled, and as far as I know, none of the people I know in books have at least told me that they've had any issues with that. So I hope they haven't.
Yeah, we know the people we met in Vegas weren't sure where it's going to go for them on an individual basis. But so good luck with that, and they're nice folk. Okay, that's it. Thank you very much indeed to everyone behind the scenes who's for 2022 helped this podcast get out on air. I want to say thank you to our Patreon listeners who are a special part of the show. We're looking at revamping the offering on Patreon for 2023, so stay tuned for that. And so that's John and Stuart and Catherine and other John who does the editing.
Tom.
Have I forgotten? And Alexandra, who's actually retired this year but she worked on the podcast every week. Alexandra Moore, wish her the best in her retirement from that type of work, at least. And that's it. I think we'll see you one more podcast before the year rolls over, and we will see you next week. All that remains for me to say is it's a goodbye from him.
And a Merry Christmas from me.
Merry Christmas.
Get show notes, the podcast archive, and free resources to boost your writing career at selfpublishingshow.com. Join our thriving Facebook group at selfpublishingshow.com/Facebook. Support the show at patreon.com/selfpublishingshow. And join us next week for more help and inspiration so that you can make your mark as a successful indie author. Publishing is changing, so get your words into the world and join the revolution with The Self-Publishing Show.